We move on to our next fireside chat of the day, and this is again a very special one. We're going to talk about the role of economic development in industrial growth. Our esteemed panelist for this one is Mrs. Gunjan Krishna, IAS. She's Commissioner of Industrial Development and the Director of Industries and Commerce, Govt of Karnataka. Let me allow to introduce Mrs. Gunjan. She is a 2004 batch IAS officer of the Karnataka cadre and a winner of the Subhash Dua Memorial Gold Medal for Best Performance in IAS Professional Training. In a recent stint as Principal Consultant, NEGD, Karnataka, she was instrumental in developing mobile governance blueprint and successfully running the e-procurement portal. Later, as MD of KSIIDC, she was responsible for planning and development of the airport infrastructure in Karnataka, and we've seen how beautiful our Bangalore airport is. She is the first women commissioner of industries in Karnataka and guided formulation of multiple policies such as the new industrial policy 2020-2025, ESDM, new EV policy, aerospace and defense policy, data employment, and in the state that focus on developing clusters across sectors. As a result of these policies and efforts taken for the investors' outreach, Karnataka garnered 38% of the total FDI flow into the country, and I think that's laudable. Ladies and gents, can we please have a round of applause as I invite Mrs. Gunjan Krishna on stage. Please, ma'am. A few more words on her. During the COVID pandemic, she coordinated with BEL as the state's single point of contact to ensure manufacturing and timely delivery of 30,000 ICU ventilators. As a Commissioner of Industries, she was instrumental in organizing the highly successful Global Investor Meet Invest Karnataka 2022, which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. The event saw a large participation of industry leaders and was successful in attracting 9.8 lakh crores of investments to the state, including investments in some of the new age sectors such as green hydrogen, electronics, lithium-ion cells, and e-mobility. In conversation, we have our Professor Ravi Anshuman. He's a Professor of Finance and Accounting and the Chairperson from IIM Bangalore. Professor Anshuman's research interests cover the area of market microstructure, capital markets, corporate financial management issues in emerging markets. His publications have appeared in the Review of Financial Studies, Journal of Financial Economics, Journal of Financial Markets, and he has co-authored a book titled Valuation, Analyzing Global Investment Opportunities. In addition to his experience in academia, he has consulted with various blue-chip companies. He is a member of the Certification, Formulation and Testing Committee, CFTC, and Futures and Options, FNO Executive Committee of the National Stock Exchange, which we know as NSE. He's a PhD in Finance from University of Utah, USA, and a BTech from IIT Kanpur, India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Saurabh. Appreciate it. First of all, it's my pleasure to invite Mrs. Gunjan Krishna. She's a really accomplished person, and today my questions to her would be four parts. First, I'll start with your personal things about you, if you don't mind. This is a fireside chat, and we need to have some excitement here. So I hope you'll be able to provide some tidbits about your personal life. Then I'll get on to what you have been doing in the government. And also our audience would like to know, how does the government work? Like, how you started with an economics graduate, like as an economics graduate. Then you also did some law, right? But how did you end up in MSMEs? Like, do you force your way through that, or how does the process work, right? So that's the second part of my list of questions. The third part would be more about current policy initiatives which have been happening in the last few years. And the final part will be the future projections, what you have. So that's the breakup, so that you get an idea where we are headed. So let's start with your personal life, right from your parents, your siblings, your schooling, and how did you end up in this career?
Thank you so much, Ravi. It's a pleasure to be here. Talking about your personal journey, it's always, I feel serendipity has been a part of my life. Things happen to me, not that I planned, but they did happen, and I'm thankful for that to God that they happened well. I did my schooling. I come from a small town called Meerut. Many of you would know, very close to Delhi, and I studied in school, Sophia Girls School there. At class, when I passed out from 12th, and I was like, what should I do? My parents definitely were very interested that I get into engineering. That is the option number one for anybody who does science, especially PCM. But I had other plans, and I wanted to go to Delhi and do economics. And my father tried very hard not to let me go. So what he said is like, I'm not going to pay for your hostel and all. So what I did is like for first year of my college, I got into LSR, Lady Shri Ram College. I every day traveled in the morning by the bus and came back by the bus. So that was an interesting start of my journey. When it comes to the IES, like how did I get into this? Again, serendipity. I was thinking I did as you mentioned correctly, I did economics and then I did law, and I was thinking of pursuing hard studies, going abroad, and I had taken my GMAT also, got a good score. And I happened to be talking to my roommate, Fatima is her name, and I was discussing that, why everybody says that this exam is the most difficult exam. I would, just try it, just a thought came to my mind. And my parents had also said that it would be nice if you take this exam, to be honest. And she got 2 forms. And she had got 2 forms, and she was planning to take the exam. And she got 2 forms, one for herself and one for her then boyfriend. And luckily for me, on that day, her boyfriend didn't turn up. So the boyfriend didn't turn up, I got the form. Otherwise, I would not have done the effort of going to the UPSC and picking up the form. So I'm internally thankful, and she doesn't, lose any chance reminding me that because of her, I'm here.
Thank her boyfriend also.
The boyfriend she's married to someone else, thankfully. So, and then of course, when I entered the IS, and before that, I had done some work in NHRC because law was my thing, and I worked on human trafficking, and some of the work that we had done on working out all the legal regime on the trafficking was published by NHRC. So it comes as a whole book which under NHRC publication. See, IS is one such, it gives you an opportunity. It's like consultancy. Like if you go to McKinsey and BCG, you are working on different problems and you learn while, doing your work. So it's very exciting, and right from the first posting, you are at the leadership stage. So you are actually working as a leader, whether you're leading a subdivision or you're leading a district, and then you are leading a department. And you can be put in any position. So there is nothing, I cannot plan what would be my next posting be. So I can be today working in industries, tomorrow in agriculture, or third day in some other work. So it is like it depends on our political masters.
So I have a question on that. If you look back, the civil services basically started with the British and all that. And there was a need for very generalist kind of people, right? Today's world is much more complex. So how has IAS system evolved to accommodate specialists, or do they still believe in a generalist approach? Like today you are in industries, tomorrow you can be in fisheries, day after tomorrow you can be in some other thing. So it seems like some generalist skills are obviously required, but to what extent has specialization come to matter? Because today's world is much more complex. All bureaucrats need to know things in much more depth. And to what extent does this trade-off work out currently?
So to my mind, there is no trade-off because when exam is taken, we have wide diversity. So you have people, somebody from economics getting into, somebody from IIT getting into, you have medical profession people getting into. So you have those skill set available when at the entry level itself. Second is we also have access to all the specialists and professionals. So it's not that we are not taking advice. But having said that, sometimes specialization does give a tunnel vision because you are deep into your field. You're not able to look into the context in which the policy has to be made. So for that context, the generalist, because the idea that we are put in one department and the totally different department gives us a wider perspective. You know how the world, and the first posting which a young IS officer gets is in the rural areas, is in the Mofussil town. So you understand what is happening from the agriculture to health, and as a district collector, as a CO Zilla Parishad, you are essentially looking out after the entire development work. So you are not just looking at one particular department, you are looking at irrigation, you are looking at agriculture, you are looking at health, you are looking at everything, rural development, you are looking at self-help groups, you are looking at the financial industrial development. So you have this idea and these skill set that you acquire, the decision making becomes very, very important part. And you always, one thing I must say is that we always take record. You talked about mobile governance. I have not done, I'm not from IIT, I am not an engineer, but I was able to design the entire mobile governance framework very well, and it was recognized by the World Government Conference. Is essentially because that I consulted everybody, but I have the domain knowledge what will work and what will not work, and that helps. Of course, and we have education in career in between. We can always go, and there are so many people who go specialize in certain areas. There are PhDs. There are people who are working. Yeah.
Yeah. Several civil servants continue to do a PhD. I remember Mr. Baijal, I think, in the Disinvestment Commission. He's written a book and. He did a PhD in UK.
So the present finance secretary, very few people will know, has written a book on derivatives.
Okay, who? Ajay Seth?
No, TV Somanathan.
TV Somanathan, yes, of course, yes. Okay, great. So, coming back to what's happening in India right now, and I want to reserve the future part to later, but can you tell us what's happening in the last few years, let's say 5, 6, 10 years, on policy initiatives in industrial development? Because industrial development is the key to economic growth, and if you think about strategic strengths of any nation, there are two aspects to it: the defense aspect, as you know, the defense capabilities, but as the name suggests, it's all about defense. The offense comes from economic growth. Unless you have economic growth, you can't strategically position yourself in the Committee of Nations. So it's extremely important, especially for our country at the stage of growth we are, to really catch up on economic growth, because if we don't have economic growth, everything else won't matter. And for economic growth, one of the fastest ways is industrial development, right? And so, but the challenge we have right now is we need to have nuanced economic growth. It can't just be GDP growth. The developments which are happening right now, the China +1. So we have to reposition our economic growth in such a way that we fit into the global value chains. And to that extent, what's been happening in the last few years, can you just elaborate on that?
So I totally agree with you, because the might of a nation does not alone come from its defense might. But from the economic might. And that is why, if you look at it, ever since liberalization took place in 1990s and thereafter, it is where, the stature of India grew on the world scenario. And right now, why India is toast of the world is essentially because of that. Because if you look at the data in the past 10 years, and I'll talk about India, and then I'll come to Karnataka, because that is where I am serving. We've been growing at a very good rate, and in the past few years, India is the only country which is growing at 6 to 7% rate of growth. Now, in this scenario, and also we have seen after COVID, there has been a shift. Now, the shift that we are seeing is in the global supply chain. One shift we see what's happening between China and the US, and that is leading to China plus one. There are, people looking at diversifying their supply chain. The other shift you see between European Union and Russia. Again, that is going to weaken, and that will give opportunities to countries like India. And the third shift you see is between the ASEAN nations. In the ASEAN nations, there's a lot of increase in the trade within the ASEAN countries. So these are the dynamic shifts that we are seeing. And within that, what we are also seeing is that these companies are not just looking at cost efficiency. Cost efficiency, hitherto during the globalization time, is the cost efficiency. Lowest. Companies were actually running after the lowest cost places. But right now what they're looking at resilience, because we have seen during the COVID times how the supply chains got disrupted. So here people are looking at resilience. Now you need to have redundancy in supply chain, and how to ensure, and there is a friendly shoring of supply chain. So in that respect, India is very well placed. We are placed geographically in a way that hitherto companies were only looking at India as a, we have a huge population, so of course look at India as the market. But what now countries are looking at both as a market and for export. And that ways we are very well positioned. The way we are located, we can serve both the eastern markets and the western markets. So that is like advantage us. And in that, what government has been doing is, if you look at Government of India, we have Gati Shakti, where we have put 1.2 trillion US dollar, for developing the infrastructure. We are looking at Sagar Malas, all these road infrastructure development. Now coming to Karnataka. Karnataka, for the past 10 years, we've been growing at the rate of 12.4%. Now 12.4% is a huge, this is higher than the average of India. And here again, the focus has been that how we become an integral part of global value chain. And we have had, government has started with production linked incentives. The idea is that, values which are coming from outside, we will be able to capture it. In Karnataka also, we have this industrial policy, and the whole policy focus has been how Karnataka becomes an integral part of the global value chain. And for that, we look at the factors of production, because how do you ensure that the factors of production, be it finance, be it the skilled part of the, and be it, your lands availability, the technology availability, all of them are easy for the people. So that is, again, we worked out a turnover-based incentive in which export is included. Important part is, of course, ease of doing business, because if we compare ourselves with countries like Vietnam, Philippines, and all, they have much more ease. And that is something that we need to ensure that there is truly a single window. And investors find it's very easy to invest. And if we are able to crack this, the kind of, we have got the number of people who are interested in coming into India. Like you said, 38% of foreign direct investment, we are always in the top 3. Now we have to focus on how we deepen the value chain. You have got, Foxconn, which is doing the EMS, the value created is only 5 to 10% there. Can we get more electronic component manufacturing? Can we, in aerospace and defense, again, Karnataka is number 1. If you see all the 3 parts, whether it's aerostructures, in engine design, or you're looking at avionics, in all these 3 sectors, Karnataka is doing very well. We are the number 1 when it comes to R&D, because R&D is where the IP gets created at the maximum value. Semiconductor again. So what we have done is we have created this domain, EV policies, aerospace and defense policy, looking into account that how we can capture the maximum part of the global supply chain.
Yeah, good, interesting point, and I'll relate it to something which Mr. Prashant Bitte said just in the previous Fireside Chat. I mean, initially we may not be up the value chain, we may not be doing things which are very product related, but you got to start somewhere. And so like he pointed out, he started with services, provide a utility, and then you move to the product. Likewise, India also will get its time. So we might be doing a lot of, service kind of business, like all the software business, but now we will move towards more products and more innovation which is tailored to our requirements. We have a huge market, and that market itself can take care of innovations which happen in India. So I think that focus is one of the things which Make in India and all is doing. So can you talk a little bit about the Make in India kind of stuff, and to what extent Karnataka has been at the forefront of this?
So I will interpret Make in India is essentially that we get more and more manufacturing capabilities of the complex products within the country. And Make in India also means innovate in India. So we need to have a lot more innovations coming out of India. So the focus here is that we innovate, we build products which can compete in the world market. And there are a number of people who are doing that. Having said that, we also ensure that so I don't believe personally that we should have huge tariff structure and then we stop the other people, because then our consumers would be paying for increased tariff. What we need to ensure is that we get companies coming from outside, at the same time companies from within. And for that, what we do is that suppose any company, say I just give an EMS, iPhone manufacturing companies here, then we talk to them. We ask them, who all are your vendors? Now, these are the list of the vendors. If they can come from outside, good, because our people will get trained. But having said that, there would be people within our state, within our country, who can be developed to reach to that particular level. So then we do this massive exercise of the vendor development with each and every. And as a result of it, if you look at it, when we got iPhone manufacturing, now we have companies which are going to do the casing, which is the component, going deeper inside. Then we have their camera module will be made here. The packaging part is also going to be done there. Your casing for your watches and your MacBook Air would also be done here. So you just have to keep going and ensuring that we have this value chain capture. Along with the focus, say for example, when I talked about 85 plus fabless chip design companies that are located here. So R&D is something that we need to spend more and more money in. Karnataka again was the first one. We started with Shuffle, where we were looking at some design linked incentives to give it to our people who are coming. So that again part. Also, we need to look at which are the areas in which government can really incentivize, because there are certain areas of working in R&D where the entry barrier is very high. It becomes very difficult for a normal person to enter. Maybe, if I talk about NVIDIA's chip and the kind of designing that, maybe it's very difficult for someone, even a youngster, a brightest youngster from IIT to enter that. But there are newer technology that are coming where the entry levels are barriers are low. So let's focus on that. So R&D definitely, getting maximum number of people from abroad in all emerging technologies. So we created a framework where we say, first is we give focus to all those industries which has the highest value addition, GVA we term. Second is those places where employment generation is the maximum. And third is never, let emerging technology go out of sight. So you always focus on emerging technology, because those are the technology which will give you edge in the future. So we have these three-pronged strategy, not that one is given preference over the other, but we work on all these three in Karnataka. And the building blocks is your infrastructure, your ease of doing business, creating a skill set that is required, providing logistic ease, and of course social infrastructure, because if anybody is coming from outside, would require the schools, the hospitals, the colleges, everything put together for a quality living.
Excellent points you've made. And just touching upon the fact that you would rather have outsiders come in, so there's more collaboration and we learn along the way. So what do you think about, and this is a more national level question I'm asking, is dispute resolution. Like if you want to get a lot of foreign capital in, our track record in ease of enforcing contracts is quite bad. In the set of nations, we rank about 178 out of 189 or something on ease of enforcing contracts. And there are various reasons for it. Our system works in such a way that the judiciary can interfere in the arbitration process also. if there are public policy issues involved. And then, of course, it's it's subject to interpretation. Judges might interpret public policy implications in different ways, and the implication sometimes is very broad, and that could lead to continuous engagement. In fact, the stats show that enforcing contracts, once you end up in some dispute, about 24 months are lost in lower courts, first instance. Another 12 months is lost at high court level, and as much as about 48 months at the Supreme Court level. So for a total of 7 years, and about 40 to 50% of the value is eroded in that process. So dispute resolution is very important. We need to have quick dispute resolution. There are constraints, but the reason I'm asking that is you pointed out that we would like to have outside capital come in, and this is a big constraining factor. And what do you think about it in general?
So the focus is not just on the outside capital. Focus is to get more and more private capital to come within. So government spends, like when we talk about, government should spend more. Of course, government should spend on these common goods, public goods which are available to all. That is the best way, for an economy to grow. Your private investments from people, from industry should come more. And of course, to grow at a higher rate, you need a lot of FDI also coming in those sectors where the growth and the multiplier effect is higher. Now, talking about, courts and the system, in ease of doing business, which Government of India in doing business, the World Bank we had this specific section which was looking after only about the legal ease. And there the idea is to create more and more commercial courts. So you have dedicated commercial courts to resolve these disputes. So that has been created in Karnataka also. We have commercial courts. So these commercial courts are there to ensure that these disputes are taken care of. Of course, depending upon the companies, you may have sometimes, that Indian courts take up things. Sometimes there are courts, in Singapore. We have a lot of arbitration happening in Singapore and London. So this is something which is constantly evolving, like ease of doing business, like we have, ease the processes of registering a company, incorporating a company. Similarly, lots of work have been identified. Most of now, if you saw during the COVID times, the entire courts, online. They did not come to standstill. They were doing everything online. So there are new avenues. It's a, works in progress.
Yes. Okay, so last couple of questions. One is, to what extent do bureaucrats, top-level bureaucrats, face the kind of sword on their neck sort of thing with the CVC and all? How does it hamper decision-making? Because many times in these disputes especially, the bureaucrats are bound to contest. And if they don't contest, even though they might privately feel that the dispute, deserves some compensation or something like that, but they're hesitant to do that because of all vigilance kind of concerns and all. To what extent is that, like, from your personal experience? I keep hearing that, so maybe it's stray, maybe it's pervasive. What do you think?
Yeah, so it is definitely true, because see, the cases like when I talk about this, the coal case, where one of our very esteemed colleague, was put behind bars. Or you saw the 4G and the CAG report. Now, CAG, all notional losses. I'm not the person to speak about it because, so if, like in the entrepreneurship, now if you're doing an entrepreneurship and if you have to take 100 decisions in a day, and believe me, we take lots of decisions. IS or our public service is all about decision making, to be honest. And 100 decisions, any normal person will take, few of them will be wrong. And not wrong because they're done with intention to harm. There may be people like that also. But genuine mistakes can also happen. Or your judgment, you cannot foresee the future, that may also happen.
You're taking risks, so sometimes things may not pan out.
So in hindsight, everybody is wise, but when it comes to, looking at it, you have to weigh, and then accordingly decisions have to be taken. So of course, if that decision paralysis can definitely happen. And of course, nobody wants, after retirement also to be penalized for something that you have done 20 years in the genuine interest of the people. So that definitely. And one thing is like, because, we as bureaucrats are always, it's something that we have to live. We are not supposed to be seen. We're supposed to be work. We are like nameless, faceless people now. So in that regard, people don't really appreciate the kind of, ecosystem. Any decision that we take can have ramifications and the number of stakeholders with very varied interest. So in that ecosystem to take a decision and nowadays you have a competitive politics also. So it is not easy.
Okay, good.
To say the least.
Okay, I appreciate your perspective. One last question before we wind up, or they throw us out. What do you think about the future? Like, where are we headed in this process of going towards this China plus one? What are the challenges we're going to face, and how do you see it?
So I feel that we are at the pivotal point, borrowing from the theme. And we are in very, very good space. Only thing is that we have to make the maximum out of it. You see, economically we are growing well. We have young population. We will be for 30 years going to have the largest working population. The demographic dividend is in our favor. We are getting capital. We are not short on dry powder, so to speak, that we cannot make things happen. Now, in that framework, we have to ensure just 2-3 things. And if we are able to do that, there is no force that we can be stopped. One is stability of policies. Okay. Because that is something any investor looks for, is that, there's a predictability of the system. Okay. So that is one. Second, I look at it as ease of doing business. Very, very important. No, because for any business person, for any industry, time is money. So if we can compress the time, we can ensure and learn from the best practices, then we are ensuring that, more and more businesses would come. That is, and of course, improve our infrastructure and improve our, so that, people find it easy, because you're not wasting time moving, you're not. So these are the 3 things. And we cannot take it, because we are the growing population, because we have a huge market. We cannot take it given. We are facing, competitions from very small nations like Vietnam when it comes to. So they are getting some things right. And we are in that path that we should get those things right. And states, many good things that you keep on hearing, Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu, Karnataka versus Telangana. So these are the good momentum that the country is having, where each state understand that to grow, you need to have more and more investments coming in, whether from the domestic or from abroad. So I think we can definitely become one of the largest and economies. Like we are talking about, we are the 5th largest. We can definitely become the 3rd largest. And of course, we have this 30 years time period. But for that, the window, when I was talking to aerospace and defense industry, the amount of planes that we are buying, we are doing only build to design, like build to suit. They give us the design. But now companies have started that they design and they take the whole thing, they design, they make it and they deliver it. So every sector that I see it, electric vehicle sector, aerospace and defense sector, electronic sectors, so many good things are coming out of that. Of course, our software sectors, the AI, the robotics and all of that, so much quantum computing, all of that is coming. Only thing is that from the government part, we have to create this ecosystem, and from the people's part, all of us have to gear it together. It's a great time for nation building.
Okay, great. On that optimistic note, I'll wind up. Thank you very much.